On today's episode, I'll be talking about my trip to the Trans-Allegheny Asylum and the Mothman Museum in West Virginia, as well as the Pentagon's upcoming information on UFOs. And of course, we'll finish with some listener stories. All this and more on this edition of Paranormal Mysteries. Thank you all for joining me and welcome to another week of Paranormal Mysteries. As always, I am your host, Nick Ryan. I apologize for not being able to upload new content sooner, but with all of the repairs and maintenance going on in my home, it's been impossible. However, I hope that all of you have had a great weekend, and before we start today's episode, I'd like to thank Samantha, Cassandra, Karen, Como, Pillar, Sean, Patricia, Jeanette, and Amanda for their support and generosity. And if you enjoy the show, please consider following, sharing, and reviewing the podcast. This supports us by helping new listeners to discover the show. You can also support us by becoming a patron at patreon.com/paranormalmysteries or by donating at buymeacoffee.com/paranormal. And if you'd like to share your paranormal encounter on the podcast, you can write to me at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com or by visiting our website at paranormalmysteriespodcast.com. Or if you'd prefer to record your experience and send it to me, you can now do this on our website as well. You can also visit speakpipe.com/paranormalmysteries and record your story there. These links can be found in the show notes. And with all that being said, we've got a lot of topics to cover on today's show. So let's begin. Known for its scenic mountain beauty, unmatched outdoor recreation, and the friendliest folks in the country, the state of West Virginia is also known to be somewhat of a mecca for paranormal phenomena, so it's no surprise that one of the most haunted locations is believed by many to reside in the town of Weston, West Virginia, at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Early colonists arriving in North America brought beliefs from the old country, some enlightened and some archaic, and unfortunately, insanity had fallen under the latter. People exhibiting aberrant behavior were popularly considered to be possessed by demons or witches, and on occasion, by the devil himself. Throughout the next century in colonial America, the treatment of an insane person was almost invariably barbaric. Those without family or friends who took responsibility for them were mostly placed in prisons in the company of common criminals, often chained to walls, unclothed regardless of temperature, and covered in their own filth. Some families did take responsibility, although they were more concerned with hiding their problematic relatives to avoid embarrassment, rather than trying to help them. They stashed them away in attics, secret sheds, and even holes in the ground, and it wasn't until the 1770s that facilities began to be constructed specifically to house the insane. But again, these places were designed to extricate the individual from society, not to help him or her re-assimilate through curative methods, because insanity at the time was universally regarded as incurable. The 1800s brought much-needed change to the world of the insane. Through the efforts of some enlightened individuals, most prominently Dorothea Dix, the desperate plight of the insane was brought to the attention of the public, and lawmakers were forced to commit funds for more humane care. By mid-century, Thomas Kirkbride's theory of creating a curative environment took hold, and the age of the asylum was born. Constructed between 1858 and 1881, Trans-Allegheny is the largest hand-cut stone masonry building in North America, and is purportedly the second largest in the world, next to the Kremlin. It was designed by the renowned architect Richard Andrews, following the Kirkbride plan, which called for long, rambling wings arranged in a staggered formation, assuring that each of the connecting structures received an abundance of therapeutic sunlight and fresh air. The original hospital, designed to house just 250 souls, was opened to patients in 1864 and reached its peak in the 1950s with 2,400 patients in overcrowded and generally poor conditions. Changes in the treatment of mental illness and the physical deterioration of the facility forced its closure in 1994, inflicting a devastating effect on the local economy, from which it has yet to recover. The asylum has played host to numerous paranormal investigation teams over the years, and many people claim to have had unnatural experiences within its walls. For this reason, I've always wanted to visit Weston and experience the history of the asylum firsthand, and this past April, I finally had the chance. Trans-Allegheny offers several different tour options, including nighttime ghost hunts, but I opted for the 90-minute historical tour, which guides you through 4 different floors, as well as multiple buildings on the property. Due to COVID and it being a weekday, there weren't many visitors, and my family and I were the only ones on the tour. This of course made our experience even more enjoyable, as we could stop and ask questions as we thought of them, and our tour guide Curtis was extremely informative and friendly. Walking the halls of this magnificent building was like going back in time, and every part of the property has its own energy and sense of history. Many parts of the main building have been restored or are in the process, while others haven't been touched and are off limits during the tours. This offers a unique look at how the building has aged, and just how much time and money has been put into the restoration effort. It's also worth noting that most, if not all, of the money that Trans-Allegheny collects in tour fees goes directly to the restoration and upkeep of the asylum. In my opinion, the experience of walking through those halls and the information we were given was well worth the $30 per person fee, especially considering that it is most likely a once-in-a-lifetime experience for many people. Now, I'm sure most of you are wondering if we experienced anything unusual while we were there, but unfortunately, we did not. However, I did take a lot of pictures, which I have posted on the forum, and perhaps I'll find some anomalies when I have the chance to study them closer. And in the meantime, if you happen to find anything strange in one of the photos, please let me know. So even though our trip to Trans-Allegheny didn't produce anything paranormal, the structure and the staff gave us an eye-opening look into the fascinating history of this ominous and beautiful building. And whether you're interested in the supernatural or just history in general, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum has something for everyone, and it's easy to get lost in its gothic appearance and its unsettling past. Trans-Allegheny is located at 71 Asylum Drive in Weston, West Virginia, and you can find it online at transalleghenylunaticasylum.com. And if you or anyone that you know is interested in history or the supernatural, a visit to Trans-Allegheny should be high on your list. Now at this point in our trip, as we left Trans-Allegheny, we turned our attention to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a small, quiet town that had its brush with tragedy as well as the paranormal back in the late 1960s, with the bizarre sightings of UFOs, men in black, the Mothman, and eventually, the collapse of the Silver Bridge. I covered this topic in episode 5, so if you'd like a more in-depth look at these events, please refer to that episode. I've been to Point Pleasant once before, and the main purpose of this trip was to visit the Mothman Museum, and it didn't disappoint. The museum sits adjacent to the large metal Mothman statue that is just outside, and the museum offers a large gift shop and an even larger museum that costs around $4 to enter. Inside, we found a large collection of pictures, artifacts, and other memorabilia that was directly connected to the Silver Bridge catastrophe and the strange encounters that many people had with the Mothman, as well as other phenomena during this time. Props and other memorabilia from the Mothman Prophecies movie can also be seen in the museum, as well as a tiny movie theater that appeared to be closed at the time that we were there. And displayed in a nearby glass case, you can see the actual suit that John Keel wore to the dedication of the Mothman statue. All in all, the museum is a strange and glorious mix of odd items that each have their own interesting story to tell. As we exited the museum and returned to the gift shop, I was almost overwhelmed by the amount of items that were for sale. From stickers and patches to retro movie posters and t-shirts, the gift shop offers something for just about everyone, including items that not only focus on the Mothman, but other famous West Virginia monsters and cryptids as well. I even had to get a Mothman t-shirt to round out my collection. Of course, after leaving the museum, we walked over to the Mothman statue and took some much-needed selfies, and then we proceeded to walk along the river and enjoy the beautiful murals that cover the nearby walls. We then headed down to the nearby Tuendewi State Park to view the memorials, and eventually we ended our trip with a visit to the Point Pleasant Trading Company, which is just across the street from the museum. We really enjoyed seeing Point Pleasant again, and I'd recommend visiting for anyone that's interested in its strange and tragic history. And of course, be sure to stop in and visit the Mothman Museum while you're there. The museum is located at 400 Main Street in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and you can find it online at mothmanmuseum.com. As I said before, all the pictures that I took during our trip can be seen on our forum at paranormalmysteriespodcast.com, as well as on Instagram at Paranormal Mysteries Podcast. Now, at this point in the show, I'd like to change topics and briefly focus on an interesting story that seems to be developing here in the United States, and multiple news channels around the world have been following it. Over the last few years, the subject of UFO or UAP disclosure has been slowly rising to the surface, with several videos being declassified by the government, and with officials admitting that they don't know what these unidentified aerial phenomena are. And while this information may seem like old news to some, just a couple of weeks ago in April of 2021, yet another video was declassified by the government and brought to the forefront by filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. Corbell was interviewed by multiple news sources regarding the video, and I'd like to play a couple clips from those interviews for you now.
Meantime, UFO sightings in New York have nearly doubled since the pandemic began, and we are getting new video from the Navy showing pyramid-shaped objects flying in the sky. Brian Yennis is live for us in Brooklyn, New York. Brian, good morning.
Trace, good morning. This extraordinary video and images of unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, were leaked to investigative reporter Jeremy Corbell and investigative reporter George Knapp. This night vision video purportedly shows 3 pyramid-shaped UFOs flying over the USS Russell off the coast of California in July of 2019. At one point, these UFOs reportedly hovered just 700 feet above the tail of the Navy destroyer, making, quote, extraordinary maneuvers. Now, Corbell says the unclassified video is part of a classified government report intended to educate officials about unidentified crafts flying over restricted airspace. These cell phone photos taken by a FA-18 pilot in March of 2019 show 3 different unidentified aircrafts off the coast of Oceania, including 2 UFOs dubbed the Metallic Blimp and another called the Sphere. A Department of Defense spokesperson said, quote, "I can confirm that the referenced photos and videos were taken by Navy personnel. The Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations." However, the Pentagon was unwilling to confirm these 3 photos, which Corbell says came from the USS Omaha, showing a UFO diving into the ocean and disappearing. Extraterrestrial or not, a bombshell UFO report is expected in June from the U.S. government.
The Pentagon has confirmed a strange and unexpected sight captured by Navy personnel off the coast of California. The video shows flying pyramid-shaped objects hovering above the USS Russell and another warship.
It was leaked by filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. He's also shared 3 images from the USS Omaha. The Pentagon has confirmed its Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force is examining the footage. Creator and editor of ExtraordinaryBeliefs.com, Jeremy Corbell, joins us now. Jeremy, incredible vision. What sets this apart from other UFO sightings captured in the past?
Yeah, it's a pleasure, David and Nat. Nice to be with you. Nice to be with you, Australia. This is a truly global story. What separates this footage compared to other UFO footage you might see is that the U.S. Navy photographed and filmed these pyramid-shaped UFOs and trans-medium vehicles. And as a journalist, I obtained and released some of this historic footage with my mentor in journalism, George Knapp. And this has now, as you said, been directly confirmed by the Pentagon. So that is significant in and of itself, how quickly they confirmed that these reports are contained within their educational briefings for individuals in the military.
What's a trans-medium vehicle?
What they witnessed with the USS Omaha was an object that was able to break the air-to-sea barrier without destruction. So transmedium means it can move between air, space, and sea without destruction or impact. And that's what they're seeing with these true unknowns.
So the US Navy, someone on a ship attached to the US Navy shot it, did they?
Well, there's a lot of sensor systems on these ships, as you can imagine. I only released non-classified or unclassified imagery I was able to get my hands on, those videos. That's a hard thing to do. But of course, there are other systems that are completely classified. These are highly documented. Look, they're coming to our warships and surrounding them on a mass scale. And this isn't the first thing. This has been going on for a long time. You're just seeing an open government policy now to talk about it.
The Pentagon is expected to release a report on its findings in June. But what do you think it's going to show? And will they be honest?
So this new candor is astonishing, after so many decades of outright lies and, along with ridicule by world governments. I mean, the US government, the Australian government, the UK, they're all guilty of it, and they all work together on this. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing changes in that environment, and that's what has started this congressional dig into this UFO topic and this, report that we're going to be getting. Well, now, because of what I released with George Knapp, they've got even more to talk about and explain.
So you're saying our government's been lying about extraterrestrial life along with the US government?
Whatever this is, whatever is represented by these advanced aerospace vehicles, I'm not saying it's extraterrestrial. I have no idea. That would be our government's position to tell us. But they've been lying that this has been happening. We're seeing a different type of attitude of world governments. And frankly, it's good. We have a right to know and a need to know as public in America, Australia, and around the world.
Just a few days ago, the Pentagon confirmed that a 2019 video of a UFO sighting is actually real. It was a UFO. The video shows a pyramid-shaped object flying over a U.S. Navy destroyer. The UFO footage was leaked to a filmmaker called Jeremy Corbell, who joins us tonight to explain all of this. Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so I obtained and released videos and photographic evidence of UFOs swarming our warships. So the green video is night vision. That's from the USS Russell. It wasn't just one pyramid-shaped craft. It was multiple. These were swarms. I also released with my mentor in journalism, George Knapp, also released from the USS Omaha, which looks like thermal imagery. He released 3 photos the day prior to mine. So we're trying to get this out to continue elevating the conversation, because it's very important we have it right now.
I mean, those are not weather balloons. Those are clearly autonomous aircraft of some kind that are, as you put it, swarming U.S. military craft. So
these are
there are two options.
Under intelligent control, flying with impunity, Tucker, within our airspace, and they can outmaneuver, outperform anything that we seem to have. Their mode of transportation seems magical to us. It's unbelievable, and now finally we're having a rational, sober discussion about this, because we don't know what these are. We don't know the nature of the technology. We need to find out who's operating them and also what the intent is. So it's a really exciting time to be learning about UFOs, because now we're having a complete tipping point with the transparency, and hopefully we'll be getting more answers soon.
This must have scared the crap out of the U.S. military. I mean, their job is to defend the country and themselves, and here these aircraft violate their airspace. Quickly, do you believe that they sincerely don't know what these things are and where they came from?
We have the best military on planet Earth, the greatest intelligence agencies. These are true unknowns, and they were swarming our military arsenals. They're seen over nuclear facilities. This is documented. We need to find out who is operating these vehicles.
As mentioned in these clips, the Pentagon is apparently planning on sharing more information sometime later this month. And many people seem to be under the impression that this information may include some highly anticipated and possibly unsettling news. Of course, this is all speculation at this point, but if any of you have any thoughts on this topic, please feel free to reach out to me. Throughout the month, I'll be keeping tabs on this news, and I'll be sure to keep you updated as we learn more. And in the meantime, I'd recommend keeping an eye open for any news on the subject. And as far as updates go, I think that about catches us up, and I'd like to now turn our attention to some listener stories. And tonight's first experience comes to us from Melanie, and Melanie's story is called Dark Figure. Melanie says, Nick, I've never been a podcast listener, but my friend got me hooked on yours. I've binged it for a week now. Thanks for providing my entertainment. I was living in my parents' home in Arizona when I was in my early 20s. My friend was staying with us at the time. I'll call her Mary. My parents were out of town, and Mary and I had gotten home late from a college dance that we had gone to. Mary was staying in the bedroom just past mine. With my door cracked open a few inches, I fell asleep and started having weird dreams about someone breaking into our house. The dreams were scary enough to wake me up. I laid there awake in the dark, just trying to fall back to sleep. A moment later, I heard the light switch in Mary's room flip on. I figured that she just needed to use the bathroom, so I watched as her dark figure passed my room, and then I went back to sleep. The next morning, I told her about the scary dream that I had, and she then told me about the scary night that she had. She said that she could feel a presence in her room, and said that she was paralyzed. I'm not sure if she had been asleep when it happened. She said she was scared to death and didn't know what else to do since she couldn't move, so she prayed. All of a sudden she was able to move again, and so she darted to the light switch and turned it on. I then interjected and said, "Oh, that's when you went to the bathroom." And she said, "No, I didn't leave the room." I insisted that I saw her pass my room, but she insisted that she never left hers. I was completely freaked out at that point because I know I saw something pass by my door. She then had to leave to go to work, and so I was left home by myself. I was more scared than I had ever been in my life. This next part to the story is very personal to me, and I haven't shared it with many people, and I'm not even sure what it was. That afternoon, I was dozing on and off on the couch in the living room, and still completely on edge. I remember in my sleepy, dazed state, wishing that my younger brother were there. He, at the time, was in Ecuador, serving a mission for our church, and all of a sudden, I had this feeling of energy or something that filled me. It started in my toes and traveled up my whole entire body like a whoosh, and then I heard this voice that said, "Hello." It was the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, but I remember that it filled me with so much comfort. It felt like it was my brother's spirit communicating with me. I wrote to my brother, telling him the story, and I asked him if he remembered what he was doing at that time. He said that he was sitting on the steps outside of a church building, reading something and praying. I don't know if it was his spirit or not that comforted me that day, but whatever it was, I am so grateful. Thank you for your time and for sharing the many stories that you do. Melanie. Our next story of the night comes to us from Brian, and Brian's story is called Evil at the Foot of My Bed. Brian says, "Hey there. I just started listening to your podcast, and it's amazing to hear all these stories, and to know that I'm not alone is comforting. I have a few stories in my lifetime, but the one that stands out the most is about the evil being at the foot of my bed. I'll go back a few years to around 2014. I had moved out with my girlfriend at the time to an apartment. It was my first time being out of my parents' house, and I must admit, it was great. Things were going smoothly until I started experiencing a series of bad luck. I lost my job, I had financial problems, I failed many interviews, and I felt as if my relationship with my girlfriend was crumbling. Since I was not working, I was just stuck at home for most of the day. I fell through a deep depression and just laid around while my girlfriend was out at work. She worked 2 jobs, so I did not see her for the majority of the day and night. I started experiencing footsteps, lights turning on and off, the sensation as if someone was watching me, but I shrugged it all off. I'm not one to get scared. To me, it was all fun and games, until I experienced something blood-curdling. One night, I was alone in the apartment. I felt very tired, so I was pretty excited to have a deep, heavy sleep. I dozed off when suddenly I woke up, and it was not the kind of wake-up where you slowly open your eyes and stretch. My eyes just shot open. I sat up, and I saw a dark figure at the foot of my bed. It was there for one moment, and I feel like as soon as I realized what it was gone. I'll admit I was freaked out. My senses were all over the place. My ears were ringing that high-pitched sound. My body felt heavy and uneasy. Quite frankly, I was more upset than scared. So I got up, and I vigorously walked out of the room and into the living room. I stood tall and brave, as if maybe showing some bravery would help me, but nothing happened as I stood there. So I walked back. I laid down and I shut my eyes. While doing so, I heard footsteps in my living room, but I did not care, and I forced myself to fall asleep. Days went by, and I did not tell anyone about what happened. I felt like it was all in my imagination, when suddenly I got a phone call from my girlfriend, and she is sobbing and crying hysterically. I ask what's wrong, and she tells me she is with her friend who is a palm reader. She felt like she needed to do a reading for me, because I have been experiencing some bad luck. The palm reader told her that there is something wrong with me. There is an evil attached to my back that follows me wherever I go, and that evil watches me sleep every night at the foot of my bed. I was shocked. I never told my girlfriend this story, and to hear from someone else who does not know me say that was horrifying. We did what we could, and we blessed the house with sage and did some chants, but it didn't feel as if it worked. So maybe it isn't the apartment. Maybe it's just me. I eventually met with a man who is some form of medicine man. He did his own reading and confirmed what the palm readers said. He supplied me with a liquid and told me to bathe myself in this liquid while chanting some words. I felt foolish, but I did it, and I felt great afterwards. I had a feeling of relief, and actually my luck turned around. I got a great job the week after, and things have been great for me. But sometimes I wonder, what was this evil being? Was it a demon? A ghost? Was it bad luck itself? I guess I'll never know. But for now, it's gone. Brian. Our next story of the evening comes to us from Ruby, and Ruby's story is called The Shell. Ruby says, "Hi Nick. Listening to your podcast has inspired me to share one of my own unexplainable experiences with you. This story happened when I was about 10 years old. My family and I were visiting some family friends at their home. I went to use their restroom, and while I was in there, I noticed that they owned a very large shell collection. I was obsessed with the sea and mermaids at the time, so I loved anything aquatic. I remember picking up a very large white conch shell and putting my ear against it to hear the sound of the ocean. As my ear was pressed to the shell, I heard a soft female voice whisper, 'Hello.' I remember feeling a sharp fear rise into my chest, and I dropped the shell down and ran out of the restroom as fast as I could. And I never told my parents or the family friends about my experience until years later. At the time, I was terrified. I had no idea what had just happened. And when I thought about it later, I hoped that it was a mermaid trying to contact me through the shell. As an adult, this experience fills me with curiosity. I wonder if the voice was a ghost or some sort of recording somehow trapped inside this shell. I don't think I will ever know, but I am glad that I can share my experience with you. Thank you so much for reading my story. All the best, Ruby." Our next story of the night comes to us from Kat, and Kat is our first listener to use our new recording system, and I know that all of you will appreciate what Kat has to say.
Hi, Nick. Name is Kat. I'm from the Bronx, and this is my paranormal story. I've been listening to the show since as long as I can remember, and listening to it for at least 2 years now has literally given me the strength and more understanding that I'm not alone out here that believes that the paranormal does exist. The story I'm about to tell you is going to be pretty long. First story took place when I was 16 years old. Our birthday had literally just passed, and my mom's best friend had not been picking up her phone. And I looked around because I literally just heard my name being called. All I heard was, "Cat, Cat." I lost my mind for a second. I told my mom, thinking that she was outright calling me out loud because that's how close the sound was. She, for a full 5 minutes, kept telling me, "Baby girl, it wasn't me. I wasn't calling you." Originally, I shook it off because, even at 16, you believe to have a wild imagination. But then what happened was that I remembered the dream I had the night before, and it freaked me out because in the dream, I was swimming in the ocean, and my mom's friend who had been in contact with her in days, was swimming, but she was trying to swim to shore with her girlfriend. Her girlfriend was able to make it to the shore, but she was having a hard time. And I was trying to see why she was having a hard time. I looked through the water, and it seemed like somebody was holding her, trying to pull her back deeper into the ocean. And me, being who I am, I love my friends, I love my family. I somehow got to the figure, and the figure was like this, I want to say, sea creature looking figure. I want to say male, but I could be wrong. And when I grabbed it by its neck, it was like, get off me. She deserves to die for what she's done. I was like, well, let the big man upstairs be the judge of that. And I felt like I was like, holding it down, and it seemed to have let her go. She was freaked out, and all I said out loud was, swim, get out of here now. And I guess she heard me, and she swam to shore. Long story short, I remembered that, all of a sudden, 20 minutes into that day, she shows up. And when my mom confirmed with her about what happened to her, she looked at me and smiled. She was like, I figured I heard you. But how in the world did you manage to actually swim out to Jones Beach 2 days prior? When I looked up to that type of power on the internet, it seems like I had astral projected. And when I told her that, she was like, well, I don't believe in that. I had asked her, but you believe the fact that I saved you at Jones Beach 2 days before? How can you not believe in astral projection when obviously I've never physically have gone to Jones Beach myself? To this day, I don't know how, but I still managed to have saved someone's life. Sorry for the long storytelling, Nick, but I had to get as much details out as possible that I could remember. Thanks for the show, and I hopefully get more stories out to you. The platform is great, considering knowing now I'm not the only one that believes in the paranormal.
Kat, thank you for your story. As we bring tonight's episode to an end, I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in, and a special thank you goes out to Melanie, Brian, Ruby, and Kat for sharing their experiences. And don't forget that if you'd like to visit the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum or the Mothman Museum, be sure to check out the show notes for all of those links. And if you've witnessed something paranormal, I'd like to hear your story. You can write to me at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com or by visiting our website at paranormalmysteriespodcast.com. Or if you'd prefer to record your experience and send it to me, you can now do this on our website as well. You can also visit speakpipe.com/paranormalmysteries and record your story there. And don't forget that all of these links are in the show notes as well. Until next time, I hope you all have a great beginning to your week, and I look forward to seeing you back here on Wednesday as we continue our journey into the unexplained, right here on Paranormal Mysteries.